What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. And this one is some of my early thoughts ahead of the Game Week 16 deadline. So I'm going to go through some key players that are worth talking about and then talk through the potential incoming suspensions through yellow cards at the end as well. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Let's get into it. So let's start with Gabriel at Arsenal. He came off at half-time against West Ham back in Game Week 13. And I remember thinking at the time, because he'd come off towards the end of the Sporting game in the Champions League just before it, that half-time sub was probably just a precaution and nothing to worry about, because they were winning the game pretty comfortably, right? They were never in danger of losing it, even taking him off and putting someone else on instead. But since then, he's missed both Game Weeks 14 and 15. Now, Arsenal do have a Champions League game midweek, so we can wait and see if he's in that squad. If he is, that's obviously a positive sign, and in that case, you probably keep him moving forward. If he's not in that squad, and we don't get any kind of timeline or positive news from Arteta, which we almost certainly won't, is there any consideration to sell him? Possibly. The reason I would be hesitant is because we don't know that it's a long-term issue. I get that it's frustrating that we don't know either way, but because we don't know it's long-term, I think we have to side towards the fact that he might be back sooner rather than later, and he's still a really good long-term option. Like, you might look at the next 6 game weeks for Arsenal and say there's only really 2 good fixtures in there for their defence. Like, attacking-wise, you're not worried about any of the games, I don't think. But defensively, you could just say that Everton at home in 16, Ipswich at home in 18 are the 2 really good fixtures. So if he's going to miss this one, why not sell him to someone else? And look, maybe if you've got a stack of transfers or a wild card soon or something like that, I don't mind it. But if you're not in that position, even though only those 2 home games look good, Palace away, Brentford away, Brighton away, Spurs at home, it's not ideal. And you've got obviously Eze, Mateta, Mbeumo, Vissa, João Pedro, etc. And Spurs often score in any game they play. But the Arsenal defence is so good. They will go away to some of these teams and keep clean sheets. And you've got the attacking returns on top. There's just not very many defenders that can compete with Arsenal ones. Possibly Liverpool ones at the moment, so Trent and Van Dijk. But they've got Spurs away in 17. So as much as I don't hate bringing Liverpool defenders in this week, and I may well do it myself, the real good fixtures for Liverpool start in Game Week 18. So I think right now, I would do what you can to hold on to Gabriel, but I don't completely hate the idea of selling him. And obviously you can bring him back later on, right? And for some of you, you might just be switching to another Arsenal defender. So although Gabriel does have the highest goal threat in that team when they're all fit and available, going for a different Arsenal defender is unlikely to net you a considerably less amount of points, right? So if you're going from Gabriel to Saliba, Gabriel to Timber, if there's still doubts on Gabriel this week, I don't completely hate it to make sure that you get an Arsenal defender in for these fixtures. After the Spurs at home game in 21, they then got Villa at home, Wolves away. Again, I don't mind playing Arsenal defenders in either of those fixtures. City at home in 24 is tough. But then it's Leicester away, West Ham away, Forest away. Like, I just think the fixtures are pretty good for a while. Like, don't get me wrong. I think the 19 to 21, Brentford away, Brighton away, Spurs at home, I wouldn't necessarily target Arsenal defenders if I didn't already have them. But I wouldn't get to those fixtures and be in a complete panic. Like, Arsenal can go away to Brighton and keep a clean sheet. So that's probably where I'm at right now. Hopefully, he's just in the Champions League squad. We don't have to worry about it, and we just hold on to him. If he's not, I think it is feasible for some people to sell him, but I will be leaning more towards trying to hold on to him. If, by the way, and this is a bit different for my own team, if I decide that I really want Saka and I've got to free up a defender spot and Gabriel's a doubt and Saliba isn't, I may well sell Gabriel. I might regret it in a few weeks, but in that situation, I might do it. And you might be in a similar situation where you've got the choice between selling an Arsenal defender, and in which case you probably do go for the doubt. But for those of you that are on Saka, Gabriel, and someone else, so Saliba, Timber, or Raya, I think I would just keep Gabriel because he's so much better than nearly every other defender. I would give him a chance to be playing for me over the next few weeks, even if he misses that Everton game. So I think I've got to talk about Enzo Fernández. The guy cannot stop getting FPL returns at the moment. He's like a cheap Bruno Fernandes. If we look what he's done recently for 4.9 million, it is 3 goals and 3 assists since Game Week 11. And in Game Week 11, he didn't even start against Arsenal. He came off the bench and got that assist. I think it was for the Pedro Neto goal from outside of the box. So he's done decently. He's only 4.9 million. He's looking like a pretty good enabler. And I think that's basically what he is. Does everyone need to get really excited and go out and buy Enzo Fernández? Probably not. But for those of you that are on wildcard, you might want to consider it to have money to spend elsewhere. And for anyone that's looking to downgrade a midfielder to fund a forward move or a defensive move, whatever it might be, Enzo Fernández at 4.9 does look pretty decent right now. I wouldn't say that his place in that Chelsea team is 100% nailed on. Chelsea fans, if you think that's incorrect, please let me know in the comments below. And I know that sounds stupid to say when he's had 4 back-to-back 90 minutes, but Caicedo has played a couple of games at least from right back. I know he doesn't necessarily stay on that right flank all the time, but on paper that's where he's lining up. So if Lavia, Fernández and Caicedo were all to be fully fit and available, and Gusto was to play at right back again, then all of a sudden you've got a bit of rotation in those midfield spots, and I'm not sure that Enzo Fernández would necessarily be completely locked in for every single game. And maybe that doesn't matter at 4.9 million, but I think it's at least a consideration. Or more to the point, it's a reason why I don't think you need to rush out and buy him. Again, on wildcard, fair enough. If you need to downgrade a midfielder to go somewhere else, then great. But I don't think if you've got like Morgan Rogers, for example, or Emil Smith-Rowe, and you don't need the money for anything, that you need to be making these swaps. I think in those cases, even with Smith-Rowe, I'm sure some people are starting to get a little bit frustrated with him if you're an owner. Like at 5.6 million, it feels a little bit sideways to move to Enzo. I'd rather roll the transfer and keep hold of Emil Smith-Rowe one more game. And after game week 16, by the way, the fixtures get pretty good anyway. So I like Enzo as an enabler. I'm not sure I'd be rushing out to buy him in most situations. And obviously, midfield spots are quite stacked right now. Like especially if you sold Haaland, right? If you haven't got Haaland, nearly everybody is trying to get Palmer, Saka and Salah. So that's already 3 spots taken up. I've got Fernández where Saka is for most people. And then I've got Mbeumo and Rogers. So I'm not going to waste a transfer on Rogers to Enzo Fernández. And Mbeumo to Enzo is fine if I need the money elsewhere. But right now I don't. So I'd rather have Mbeumo. Like Enzo's underlying stats at 4.9 million are pretty good. 0.15 expected goals per 90, 0.2 expected assists. But they're nothing to get super excited about. The idea that this rate of returns is going to continue for the next 6-7 game weeks is very unlikely. Although Chelsea do have pretty great fixtures, so you never know. He may well keep scoring like 6 returns every 6 game weeks. What else is there to say? I guess the only other thing to consider is whether you might want to triple up on Chelsea from other players at any time over the next few weeks, bearing in mind how good the fixtures are. Pretty much everybody wants Palmer right now. That makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't say he's essential, but he's pretty damn good. And then Nicholas Jackson, obviously 8.2 million, hasn't got any returns in the last couple of game weeks, but obviously he missed the Southampton game completely. He looks great coming up. I personally will probably keep avoiding him because of the yellow card situation, but he's clearly very aware of yellow cards because yesterday when Enzo scored, he was pulling his shirt down. So Enzo Fernández looked like he was about to try and take his shirt off to celebrate, would have obviously got a yellow card. Nicholas Jackson was holding his shirt down. I'm not sure if that was on purpose, but it looked to be. So maybe he will avoid it. Right? He's only got to get through another 4 games. So I wouldn't want to lock myself out of getting Jackson. Cole Palmer's great. And then maybe a defender like Colwill. Like some people don't rate the Chelsea defence that highly, but I think they're decent enough. Like once you get off like Arsenal and Liverpool defenders, there's not a huge amount of teams that are like massively better than Chelsea. They probably are the next tier down. And the fixtures are excellent. And Cole is only 4.5. And he's only on 3 yellow cards as well, which is quite nice. It's going to be a bit more difficult for a centre-back to avoid yellow cards versus a number 9. But I still think he's a pretty good option. And when you think about other 4.5 million defenders that you might want to go for, Van Heck's on 4 yellow cards. Lewis Hall, I think, looks really nice for the next couple of games. Leicester at home, Ipswich away. But Villa at home, Man United away, Spurs away. After that, are not going to be easy for clean sheets. I think Chelsea's fixture run is much better. So I'm not saying you have to rush out and triple up on Chelsea. But if you've already got Palmer and you want Jackson and you might want a defender, then I probably wouldn't block yourself with someone like Enzo. But as an enabler outside of that, looking pretty good right now. So I can already picture my future. I'm sat there after game week 38 recording a video of how the season went. And I'm looking at Chris Wood somehow on 25 goals, wondering how he never made it into my FPL squad at all. And I think the goal against Man United this weekend was a nice reminder about how well he's done so far. Like, some people would have taken him out recently before Man City away, and he did blank in that game. And I think that was a fair enough call. If you did sell him, you absolutely shouldn't regret that move. I think it was a decent one. But it is a reminder, that Man United game, about how much value he is right now at 6.5 million. Like, he's got 10 goals in 14 starts over 15 game weeks. That's a really nice return. Now, I don't necessarily expect him to get 10 goals over the next 14 starts, but I think he'll chip in with enough goals to be good value at 6.5 million. Now, like Enzo Fernández, I don't think you need to rush out and buy him. But if you are looking to buy a cheap forward at the moment, I don't think there's any reason to overlook him just because people have sold recently. I still think players like João Pedro at 5.9 are excellent value, and you should be thinking about your future moves and what you might need the money for, and that 0.6 million saving might well be worth it. Now, João Pedro is not necessarily going to get as good minutes as Chris Wood, but the fixtures are decent, and his price is very nice as well. They've got to play Arsenal at home in 20, but outside of that, they don't have a huge amount of worrying fixtures up until, like, I don't know, for a long time, I would say. So I still like João Pedro. I don't think many people are going to buy Raul Jimenez right now, and Strand Larsen will be a short-term move. But João Pedro in particular is decent. But up from him, like 0.6 million more, I don't think the fixtures that Forest have got coming up should be anything to put you off. Like, you wouldn't handpick Villa at home, Brentford away, Spurs at home, Everton away, and then Wolves away in 20. But I don't think there's anything there to particularly worry about either. Aston Villa is not a watertight defence. Brentford will score goals past you, right? That's clear this season. But they'll also concede plenty as well. Spurs, we know, they always give up at least a chance or two or three or four. And Van de Ven's just picked up an injury. Apparently it's not that bad, but you never know how long he's going to last. Romero's picked up an injury as well. Like, game week 18 is not that far away. And okay, Everton away can defend nicely on their day, especially when Branthwaite's fit and available. But I just don't see it as a massive concern. I think at 6.5, there's probably not a huge amount of better forwards right now to be looking at, if that's your kind of price point. Like Jamie Vardy, maybe, he's on 4 yellow cards. I don't mind Evan Nielsen at 6.1 as well, to be fair. Their fixtures are quite good. But his minutes aren't amazing either, like João Pedro. And Chris Wood's also on penalties. So I quite like him. I wouldn't regret it if you've sold him. But I think if that's the kind of price you're looking to spend, I really don't mind it. I feel like there's another forward that I'm missing. Like Visser I probably wouldn't go for right now. The fixtures are getting a bit more difficult for them. That's why a lot of people have started to look to get rid of Mbeumo recently. I think Strand Larsen at 5.6 is not bad for Ipswich at home, Leicester away. But after that, like, he's fine because of the price and the fact he always starts. But I don't think he's better than Chris Wood. And then you've got like Calvert-Lewin, Delap. It's just not getting any better. So I think for that price, he's pretty nice. Obviously, if you've got the money to go to like Isak or whatever, then fair enough. But yeah, we shouldn't be overlooking Chris Wood, but we also should not be regretting selling him recently, because I think the Man City away game was a nice jump-off point to other players. So I feel like we've got to talk about Erling Haaland again. There was people on the stream yesterday that still have him in their FPL squad that are wondering whether this is a good week to get rid of him, or have they missed the boat on doing it now because the fixtures coming up are pretty decent. And from 18 onwards, the fixtures are very good. But to be honest, even this week, they're not bad, right? Man United at home, who would put it past Man City to go and score 3 or 4 goals in that fixture? Villa away in 17 is not bad. And then the fixtures between 18 and 22 are really good. Everton at home, Leicester away, West Ham at home, Brentford away in 21. And then 22 is Ipswich away. So it does feel like not an ideal time to jump off him. But I feel like the reasons to do it are the same as they have been for weeks now. It's not just about getting Salah instead of Haaland because he's better, or getting Palmer instead of Haaland because he's better. Because let's be real, the swing of points for those of us that sold him versus those that didn't has been absolutely ridiculous. We got very lucky with that move. And I'm not trying to say that it was a bad move with a very lucky outcome. I think it was a good move with good reasons to do it. But the amount of points has been absolutely insane. Haaland is fully capable of doing what Salah and Palmer, etc. have done over the last few weeks. But it's not just about switching him to one of those midfielders. It's about the extra money you then get to spend elsewhere. And I think if you've got the transfers to distribute that money quickly, I still think there's every reason to think about selling Haaland. Like, I always have to relate it to my team, right? Because I made the move. Like, I've got Salah and Palmer. I've got a route to Saka if I want it, right? So I can do Fernández to Saka, and I can fund that by selling Saliba and Rico Lewis. I can get a Liverpool defender in there. I can go and get someone like Colwill as well. So without Haaland, I've got Saka, Salah, Palmer. I still think Mbeumo's perfectly fine at his price. At some point, I could downgrade him to like a Semenyo and Eze, I don't know, Mitoma, whoever it might be. You know, Solanke up front, I still think is a little bit... I won't say underrated, but I still think he's a perfectly fine pick. He's got Southampton away. And then, okay, I've got 2 cheap forwards in Raul Jimenez and João Pedro rather than an Isak. But then at the back, I've got double Arsenal defence and a Liverpool defender and a Chelsea one for cover who's very cheap as well. I just never feel like I'm massively missing Haaland because there's always another player that I'm happy enough captaining. And even if Haaland goes and gets a brace or a hat-trick, my players can do exactly the same. So I still don't think it's that bad of a week to sell him, to be honest with you. The thing that, if I was a Haaland owner still, this is what I would be thinking. Because the reality is, if you've owned Haaland these last few weeks, you probably haven't done on average that well. There will be some people out there with Haaland that have absolutely smashed it, but most people won't have done well. So the thinking will be, there's some good fixtures coming up for differential captains. But I think unless the rest of your squad can stack up versus non-Haaland squads, I'm not sure that's going to matter massively. Because you need Haaland to start getting braces and hat-tricks, while Palmer and Salah are just not scoring. And I just don't see that happening. So that's my main worry, is the thinking will be differential captains, but the rest of the squad will not be able to keep up necessarily. So like this week, for example, Haaland to Isak looks like a really nice move because Isak's got Leicester at home, Ipswich away right in front of him, and pretty good fixtures generally from an attacking point of view. And then you can go and get a premium midfielder on top. Maybe then you've got some money left over to upgrade the defence. So I don't think it's a must. I don't think he's must sell. I really don't think that. I think you've been extremely unlucky and the points will come. He's still getting chances. But I think it's more than reasonable to still do it, even with the fixtures they've got coming up. Because as I said weeks ago, most game weeks over Christmas, there's an alternative captain. I think game week 20, when Haaland plays West Ham at home, like he's really nice that week because Saka's up against Brighton away, which is not a terrible fixture for him, but it's probably not one you would look at and think, I've got to captain him. Palmer's away as well against Palace. Again, perfectly reasonable to captain him, but you'd prefer a home game. And to be fair, Salah's up against Man United, and he does have a pretty good record, so maybe actually that's perfectly fine. But on paper, Haaland is the best captain. But if you go to game week 19, when Haaland's got Leicester away, I mean, imagine at the start of the season thinking I'm not going to have Haaland for Leicester away. But right now, you'd be more than happy captaining Palmer against Ipswich away. Game week 18, when Haaland has Everton at home, early kickoff, by the way, on Boxing Day. I know people hate the early kickoff for captaincy. Salah, in the evening, you know, after you've had a few of the leftovers from Christmas Day, he's got Leicester at home. Like, Saka's got Ipswich at home. There's always an alternative. 21 away to Brentford, Haaland. You've got Salah against Forest away is probably not great. I'll tell you what's not bad, though. Palmer against Bournemouth at home. Like, I don't know. I just don't see me going back to Haaland. I'm not completely ruling it out because depending on my moves this week, I might have 3 or 4 transfers as we get closer to game week 18, 19. I might do it. But the problem is, for me to go back to Haaland, I would have to get rid of Palmer or Salah. I just don't see why I would want to do that anytime soon. And I like having that premium defence. I know there's been a narrative for a while that it's like no one's getting clean sheets, so they're not worth it. But to me, I think they are worth it. There's no hassle with having to switch around 5 million defenders. I like having the premium options that I can set and forget. So it's a tricky position for Haaland owners to be in. I genuinely feel for you because FPL is not a fun game when it's not going well. And I don't think you've necessarily done anything wrong either. And the fixtures coming up are good. There's some very good differential captains in there. But I think most people without Haaland are not particularly worried about who they get to captain instead. The narrative might change if he goes and bangs a hat-trick against Man United and Aston Villa and Salah and Palmer blank. But the chances of it being that, that much of a gap is probably unlikely, right? Haaland might go and get a hat-trick and Palmer and Salah might get a goal and assist. And because they're midfielders, if they pick up clean sheets, they get close to Haaland's captain points, hat-trick points anyway. I think it's reasonable to sell. That's all I can say. I feel like next week I'm going to be talking about exactly the same thing for the exact same amount of time with exact same thoughts. But not much is changing, so my opinion's not really changing either. Yeah. The first week is the worst, by the way. If you get through the first week without major damage, you won't worry about not having him anymore. That's what's putting a lot of people off. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I think you probably can sell him. It's a perfectly reasonable decision to make. So rather than go through the weekend notes at the end, because I cover a lot of that stuff in other videos, I thought I would go through potential suspensions that are coming up based on how many yellow cards certain players have. Now, just to go through a quick reminder, if you get to 5 yellow cards, you get a 1-game suspension. The limit of yellow cards increases to 10 after the 19th game for your team. So Sanchez, for example, at Chelsea, goalkeeper, is on 4 yellow cards. Once Chelsea have played 19 matches, the threshold then goes up to 10. So in game weeks 16, 17, 18, 19, if Sanchez gets 1 more yellow, he will be suspended. So if he gets it in game week 19, he'll be suspended for game week 20. So there's still a few matches to go through. It's interesting that a goalkeeper's on 4 yellow cards. I guess referees are a bit more quick to give yellows for time wasting and stuff like that. I don't think many people are considering buying Sanchez right now, but I guess if you are an owner, just be aware of it, I guess, that at some point, if you haven't got like a Fabianski on the bench, you might be without a goalkeeper. On Sanchez, by the way, I wouldn't necessarily be completely surprised if at some point he gets dropped. I thought against Spurs, he was pretty terrible, mostly in terms of his distribution. Now, I haven't seen a huge amount of Jorgensen for Chelsea, I'm going to be completely honest, but I can't imagine he's worse than Sanchez, and I thought he was pretty bad. Now, he might have been doing that for most of the season, and Maresca's sticking by him, and perhaps that will continue to happen, but it's just something to be aware of. I would not be buying Sanchez right now, put it that way. If I wanted to go for a Chelsea defensive player, I'd probably go for Carwell instead. In terms of defenders, there's some interesting ones on 4 yellows. I haven't listed every single defender, more so the ones that are interesting for FPL. So Van Heck, Munoz, Share at Newcastle, and then at Aït-Nouri. I think at Newcastle, to be fair, most people probably aren't paying the money for Share. They're probably going to go for a Lewis Hall instead, who's on 3 yellow cards, by the way. I think the players on 3, it wouldn't put me off. I would go out and buy them. So Share, probably not a consideration. I think with Aït-Nouri, I haven't seen him play yet at the time recording this video because the West Ham Wolves game is Monday night. I think at this point, I just would not be buying him. I think the time to do it was weeks ago. You've missed a bunch of good fixtures for them now. Yes, they've got Ipswich at home in 16, Leicester away in 17. But after that, for clean sheets, there ain't many coming at all. It's Man United at home, Spurs away, Forest at home, Newcastle away, Chelsea away, Arsenal at home, Villa at home, Liverpool away, Bournemouth away. Like, that fixture run is horrible. They probably will get a clean sheet or two along the way because that's just football. But I would not be betting on Wolves to get a clean sheet in any of those games from 18 to 26. So as good as Ipswich at home and Leicester away are on paper... Sorry. As good as Ipswich at home and Leicester away are on paper, I wouldn't be bringing him in. And if he gets a yellow card tonight or against Ipswich, he's going to miss one of those good games. And at 4.9, he's not super cheap either. He has got attacking potential in there. We might see that over the next 3 games, but I would not be buying him. With Munoz, I think the fact that he's up to 4 yellows would probably make me wait until the really good fixtures for Palace before bringing him in. But he is definitely going to be a massive consideration for people soon because his attacking numbers are decent. So we spoke about Gabriel earlier, 0.14 expected goals per 90, one of the best goal threats at Arsenal. If we look at Munoz on Fantasy Football Hub, by the way, as always, if you want to check this out for yourself and all the other tools, 30% off, 30-day free trial at the moment. If I just go to, let me just bring up players here, and I go to my custom stats. Yeah, and we put Munoz in. His underlying numbers per 90 are 0.19 non-penalty expected goals. So Gabriel 0.14, Munoz even better. Now, obviously, Palace defence is not as good as Arsenal, but the fixtures coming up from 18, 19 onwards are pretty decent. There's a lot of away games in there, which is not ideal. But I think when you couple his price at 4.7 with his goal threat playing as that wing-back, it's quite nice. So Bournemouth away in 18, Southampton at home in 19, Chelsea at home in 20, not so good. Then it's Leicester away, West Ham away, Brentford at home, United away, Everton at home. That's quite a nice run. He's not going to be essential, but I think for that price, if you need a new defender around then, he's worth considering. I just wouldn't bring him in right now because Brighton away, Arsenal at home, Bournemouth away, next 3 are not amazing. And if he gets a yellow card in one of these, like if he gets the yellow against Bournemouth and misses Southampton, absolute killer. And players will obviously be aware that they're on 4 yellows, but especially when you're a defender, it's hard to avoid it. And Van Heck on 4, I wouldn't buy him now. I think the good fixtures for Brighton are starting to run out a little bit. And for 0.1 million less, you can get Lewis Dunk, who's on 3 yellow cards and should be just as nailed, you would think. Like Palace at home, West Ham away, Brentford at home, next 3 are not completely terrible. But then it's Villa away, Arsenal at home, not great. Even Ipswich away. Like I'm not sure I would expect Brighton to go away and keep a clean sheet there right now. And then it's Man United away. So, again, maybe the boat's been missed on bringing Brighton defenders in. I think I'd lean more towards Carwell, who's on 3 himself. Timber's also on 3. That was one of the reasons to maybe go for Saliba a couple of weeks ago, apart from just getting lucky with him. He was only on 2 yellow cards. But I think at this point, you've only got to get through 4 more games. So 3 yellow cards, I would risk it. For midfielders, Rodgers and Kluivert both on 4. I think Kluivert was very popular after his 3 penalties, probably less so now. I still think him and Rodgers are pretty good enablers, but unless you're desperate for someone around that price, I would just avoid them. The only thing I would say if you're an owner of both those players, of course, you just keep them until they get the yellow and then deal with it then. But for me, for example, I've already looked ahead. If I keep Bruno Fernández in game week 20, he's got Liverpool away. Rodgers has got Leicester at home. So the only thing in the back of my mind, this is very minor, is what if Rodgers gets his yellow card against Brighton and misses the Leicester game? How much will that impact my team? If I've got to play Fernández in that game, is that a massive worry? That's the only real small thing I'd be thinking about. Otherwise, I would just wait until the yellow comes and then deal with it. Up front, Jackson 4 yellows. Spoken about that a lot. Delap and Vardy also on 4 yellows. Personally, I would rather buy Raul Jimenez from game week 17 or João Pedro this week. Even maybe Strand Larson if you need someone super cheap. If not, you can go up to Chris Wood. So as it stands, probably not a massive amount to worry about from an FPL point of view. I think the nice thing is most of the players on this list, if you don't already own them, there's probably not a massive need to buy them right now. So you're not in that really annoying position where there's a great player you want, apart from maybe Jackson, a great player you want that you're a little bit hesitant to bring in. Most of these players, if you've got them, you just deal with it as and when. So that's the potential suspensions. By the way, if you want to see who's on how many yellow cards players are on, you can just see it in FPL. Obviously, you can go into the player page itself, but on the right-hand side, instead of total points, you can just set it to yellow cards, and then it just shows you. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Plenty more videos to come this week. Transfer tips tomorrow, game week preview on Wednesday to cover any more players and topics that I haven't done in this video. If you've enjoyed it, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button, rate 5 stars if you're listening on podcasts, and check out Fantasy Football Hub using the links in the description below. I'll leave it there, and I'll catch you again tomorrow.